Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our event with Alison Dubois, Art Director for Tuca and Bertie. I'm Moriah Benton, class of 2016, illustration, and along with Olivia Pecini, class of 2016 FAV, and Jake Reeves, class of 2015 illustration, we launched the new RISD Alumni and Animation Affinity group as part of the RISD Alumni Association. So this is our second event, and we hope to continue to offer opportunities to connect RISD alumni who are working or have an interest in animation. Thanks again for joining us, and without further ado, I'll let Olivia take the mic to introduce Alison.
Hi, everyone. We're so lucky to have Alison Dubois with us today. She is, as Moriah said, the art director of Tuca and Bertie and my former boss. She graduated illustration in 2010 and is going to give us a presentation on her illustration and animation work and her journey to art director. Please use the Q&A function if you have any questions or thoughts that you would like to add, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. Alison, you want to take it away?
I do. Thanks, Olivia. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, of course.
For being virtually here with me. Share my screen. Did that work? All right. My name is Alison Dubois. I'm happy and nervous to be here. I'm also not great at Zoom, so bear with. All right, literally I am here about 60 hours a week these days. This is my dog Lou, who is here about 80 hours a week with me. If you're familiar at all with my work, it's probably because I'm art director on Lisa Hanawalt's Tuca and Bertie. I worked on season 1 and we are working on season 2 right now. If you're unfamiliar with the show, it's about two best bird friends in their 30s. Bertie is an anxious song thrush who's a little anal and really into baked goods, and then Tuca is her best friend. She's a little more impulsive and rambunctious. She's really into butts. I'm a little bit of both, but I definitely lean more towards Bertie. We're finishing season 2, which is going to come out for Adult Swim sometime in the summer. This is the only sneak peek I can give you. It's just an establishing shot, but here's a little something for you guys. In season 1, a big part of my job was translating Lisa's comic characters into animation and kind of fleshing out the world they live in. This is one of the earliest sketches I did of Birdtown. And then this is the final production art. Here's another really early sketch of their apartment building. Lisa wanted Birdtown to kind of feel like a mix between San Francisco, Brooklyn, and Mumbai. Here's the first sketch of Tuca's apartment. I did these kind of 360-degree views of their rooms to kind of get a sense of how the entire room was working together. And these were meant to be just kind of sketches, but our supervising director, Mike Hollingsworth, thought we could use them in actual production. So you can see when you're watching the show, we have a lot of kind of weird perspective and kind of wonky angles, and sometimes we do like full 360 kind of panoramic shots around the room. A lot of our crew is coming straight off of BoJack into Tuca, and we were all kind of hyper aware of making Tuca and Bertie feel really distinct from BoJack, so it didn't feel like a spin-off. So this was a kind of easy way to really push it into making it more cartoony, more surreal, and just very different from BoJack. This is one of the first side characters I designed, Cyril Treeman. You'll see more of him this season, which I'm excited about. Theme in my work for a long time has been food. I'm just obsessed with food and baking, and it was really great to design these pastries for Pastry Pete's. I want to eat all of these. LA Times, actually, one of their food editors he like figured out how to make a crunt, and we got to eat some crunts, and they were very good. This is just another image I found from our archives. We had to figure out where the ears were on these birds so we could give to the board artists. There's where the ears are. Some more early characters. Claudette was based on like if Anna Wintour was a cassowary. The side character is just Carlton as an earthworm. I like working on Tuca because it breaks style a lot for special sequences and sometimes entire episodes. It's really great for me because I'm always trying new mediums and techniques. And I used to think that was a negative thing about my work. Like people wouldn't necessarily know what to expect from me, like if they were hiring me for a job. But I think being comfortable with a wide variety of materials has been really a blessing for me on this show. So we did this 8-bit sequence in episode 1. I got to make a felt puppet and bush toilet for episode 4. Just a lot of stylistic changes. We had a really cool claymation sequence at the end of last season. Day-to-day production, I work with episode directors to rough backgrounds or character designs before the boards come out, develop a look for stylized sequences, and then I give notes to the character, layout, paint, and prop design departments while design is in production. And then I'm on through retakes and comp, so I'm doing QC notes, plussing anything, finishing designs we didn't finish before we shipped to the overseas studios. Here's a style guide I wrote out for our design crew this season. I love working on Tuca because it's just communicating personal stories through humor and doing that through collaboration, which is something I do a lot in my personal work as well. A hard part for me has been kind of learning how to maintain cohesion for like a project with so many artists working on the same thing. Like, how do you keep that feeling like one kind of cohesive thing while still letting people bring their own thoughts into the production? And that's been a challenge, but it's so fun, like learning people's strengths and learning how to utilize those and seeing people put their own thoughts and ideas and like terrible puns into the project. These are just some more characters I designed last season. Bernard was one of my favorites. Colin Firth just is a pheasant, so this one was pretty easy. This was an interstitial that I worked on. But how did I get a job doing such important work? The same way people win Survivor. A lot of luck, friends, almost starving for a short time, and some skills. I graduated in 2010 with an illustration degree, and I was mostly interested in comics and like the book arts. A lot of my jobs were kind of art and book tangential, but up until 3 years ago, I really didn't have a job where I was making art, and none of them were in 2D animation. But during that time, I was still pursuing art. I was attending comic conventions and submitting work to friends' comic anthologies and group shows, making and selling things at craft fairs, sharing work on Tumblr, and then RIP, and then Instagram, curating art shows on my own. I volunteered at an art studio for artists with developmental disabilities. And then even outside of art, just like following my interests, exploring and making connections based not on industry, but just interests. And for the 20 years before that, I was just kind of always writing and drawing. This is, I think, the first comic I ever did in 1996 about Ash Wednesday. One year I didn't get across and I was really upset, but then I don't really understand what happened. I guess I did get across like the next day or something. So I'm an only child and I'm pretty shy. So I've always been more comfortable communicating through words and images than verbally. So I knew I came to RISD knowing I wanted to be an artist, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted as a career. I came in thinking graphic design, but I found I missed the physicality of drawing and making by hand. So I switched to illustration, which felt a lot more true to my interests. I took a lot of comic and printmaking classes, but I thought I needed to be an editorial illustrator to kind of survive. A big turning point for me was going to Rome through the EHP program. I think in like pushing me out of my comfort zone, it kind of nudged me back into my comfort zone. I didn't have friends in the group, and I was so far away from my family that I turned back to writing comics as a way to kind of process and communicate. And it was great. I did, sorry. I did daily diary comics. So for like people would pay me €1 and they would subscribe to my comics. I would photocopy them and distribute them to people's mailboxes. It was the first time I was really comfortable sharing something so personal. And I think it was the first time I kind of gave validity to this, like as my practice. Like this could be my work and not just something I did on the side. And a lot of people in the group kind of connected with it and my stories, and it helped me fit into this great tight-knit group of people. I made a yearbook for us as something to give back to everyone in the group. And my final project was making a handbook for the next semester students. And the most important section, I think, was where I rated all the pastries I had eaten. The classic croissant, which they call a cornetto, which I ate probably like 5 times a day. That was pretty high on my rating, a 5 out of 7. Classic cannoli, I gave it a 6 out of 7. My least favorite was this thing called the baba. It's a chode-shaped pastry that is served dipped in rum. It tastes like a cupcake that got locked out in the rain. And I gave it a 2 out of 7, and I think that's being generous. It could probably be a 1. I think another big revelation for me at RISD was working on RISD the musical during winter session. I did the sets and props for that. It was the first big collaborative project I ever worked on. You know, most of my work at school had just been individual projects. And it was also my first time leading a team, working with a very tight timeline and budget, which has helped a lot in animation. And as I mentioned earlier, just finding a way to visually kind of keep things cohesive. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the production, but it was a lot of short vignettes about the process of applying to RISD all the way through graduation. Remember Waterfire? I created a lot of flat and oversized props that were almost cartoon versions of the things we're all familiar with as RISD students. And everything was made out of cardboard because it's RISD, baby. Here's a giant 10-foot elephant I made that shot confetti out of its nose for the graduation sequence. And then again, this is a theme I realized looking back at all my work, is that I love drawing every person who's in a project with me. So we made a playbill and I drew the cast. So at RISD, I really learned to value comics as communication and the art of collaboration, and also that you always make people smile if you draw them. That interest in collaboration continued after graduation. We all made the annual migration to Brooklyn, and me and a bunch of my friends started Collective Stench. Again, drawing everyone in the group. We were mostly illustration graduates, but there was a few people in FAV and painting. We went to comic conventions all across the US and a few in Canada. We did a lot of comic anthologies together, or like jam comics. We did a lot of group shows. Here's a comic I did about, pretty personal. One time I went to the gynecologist on Valentine's Day. This is the first and last page. You'll have to ask me later about the middle of it. Here's a comic I did for one of the anthologies we worked on called Dimensions. This is the second and last time I smoked weed. I got so high I thought I time traveled, because it was daylight savings was on Halloween. That was a wild time. Here's another Dimensions comic I did about kind of the life of a rabbit before it's pulled out of the magician's hat. After a year in New York, I moved to San Francisco for a stop motion job where I spent a year painting very tiny replacement heads. Because of the distance, I became less involved with my New York friends, but I continued curating shows and anthologies on my own, and I made new connections in San Francisco. This is where I first met Lisa. We had a lot of mutual friends in the comics world, and she was in a group show I curated. And then we became horse friends on Twitter because we're both very obsessed with horses. So here's some of the group shows I curated. I did a catalog for this one, which also is kind of like a comic anthology. This is an anthology I curated with a bunch of my friends in San Francisco. These are the end pages for that anthology I screen printed. After a year at the stop motion job, the studio closed, and I focused my attention to fabrication and exploring mediums outside of drawing and printmaking. Here's some examples. Sculpting, embroidery. I made a kind of posable felt wizard, costumes, a video project where I returned back to cardboard props. My go-to. I started designing and sewing bags, and then I got interested in dyeing and pattern making, which I really loved doing, but it really wasn't sustainable for me financially, especially in San Francisco. But that experience kind of changed the way I started drawing. I had never really been comfortable with color, which is why I like screen printing, because you draw in black and white and then you add the color later. But I started using markers and kind of drawing in layers like a printmaker, drawing from photos, life, doing a lot of master copies. I became a fan of the faux, which I never thought would happen. Just really playing with and appreciating color in a way I really had never before. I got priced out of San Francisco, and then I moved to LA, and I was just really blown away by the light and color here. And then I started working with colored pencils and doing a lot of plein air drawings, focusing on light and shadow and pushing color, which was definitely a big influence on my abilities as a background artist. And still studying the masters. This is my favorite painting at the Getty, which is a giant James Ensor painting. Until last year during the pandemic, I would go there every year and sit in front of it for 4 hours and try and get as much as I could on a piece of paper. A few months after the Trump election, I split up with the person I had moved here to LA with. And I lost my first job on BoJack, and I had to move out of my apartment, and it was just kind of a crazy, shitty time. So I started making personal comics again. Here's one called The Thrills of Living Alone. You can come home and take your shorts off and no one cares. No one cares. No one cares. Glug, glug, glug. No one. Oh. Here's me moving with all my plants. Here's my dream apartment with all my plants and rugs and books. Here's just me in a nutshell. Self as dog, bike as horse, dog as horse, hand as horse, dog is most interesting party guest. And since then, I've got my own horse, which has been a great development. So I was dog sitting for Lisa, who was working on BoJack Horseman at the time. And I just casually mentioned, if you ever need a designer, and she immediately jumped on that. I took a background and character test, which honestly, I don't think was very great because I taught myself Flash that day. But she was a really big advocate for me knowing my other work. I definitely owe a lot to her as a foot in the door. And she's a huge advocate for diversity and representation in her work and in her writing room and animation team. So I think myself and a lot of other people have her to thank for that. So I worked in backgrounds on BoJack season 4. And I was kind of not pigeonholed, but I ended up doing a lot of kind of inserts and graphics more than typical background layouts. These are for a special stylized sequence. After the season was over, I did holiday stickers for the BoJack Horse app, which I'm sure is on all of your phones. Hot reindeer. And then, of course, still appreciating the masters, but with animals this time. Here's a cool Turner painting with some fish in it. So for the past year, I've been working from home on Tuca season 2. It's been great having a team, but it's a very, very different vibe than working together in the studio. So I started, kind of feeling isolated again because of the pandemic. And I have been sharing more personal stuff on Instagram, kind of working through my anxiety through art. Here was a Easter Zoom from last year. Getting really into gardening. And I also went to therapy for the first time. And I learned about how your anxiety is like a wave. You need to learn how to surf it so you don't feel like you're drowning when it crashes. I am not a good surfer, but we're working on it. And that's true of both actual surfing and surfing the anxiety wave. Another thing I've been doing, kind of frustrated by the political and social climate, is trying to use my art for good. I've been doing fundraisers. So if people show me, they've donated to a social cause, I'll draw their dog or I'll draw their birdsona. And also, again, people love seeing drawings of themselves. So it's something to brighten people's day as well as kind of give back. This is Paige and Andrew, who are RISD alum. I don't know if you guys are here, but here you are. And then this is my design crew who worked on Tuca season 2. Coming to Adult Swim this summer sometime. Thank all these people for their hard work. And I'm going to turn it back to Olivia Pecini. Thanks, God.
Wow, I love that transition. Didn't know I was going to get such a lovely shout out, but I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alison, thank you so much for this presentation. It's so amazing to see your progression and your schoolwork as well. I actually have some questions on, it sounds like doing different mediums at RISD was really helpful, working in animation, but is there a class or a subject in particular that really stuck out to you and really has helped you in your time as an art director?
As an art director specifically?
It could be as an artist in general. Doesn't have to be. I guess I'm asking, since you tried a lot of different styles and you felt like that was really useful to you, was there a moment at RISD where you were like, this is really working for me, this is really setting me on the right path? I guess that would be maybe something like the RISD musical.
Yeah, I think the project in EHP, because I was kind of thrown away from school, I had to figure stuff out kind of by myself. It was like an independent project and I was really floundering, but then a guest critic was like, what you're doing in your sketchbook is really working. This should be what you're focused on, instead of just it being a side and you trying to think you have to find another project. This should be your project. Also, Paul Karasik's comic class was really great. I did a bunch of independent projects senior year. I think just kind of giving myself the time to figure it out for myself is what really worked for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because you also mentioned that in editorial illustration, that's something that you felt like you needed to kind of head into. And that usually seems to require some sort of very solid style, but Can you go into a little bit why it's so important to be able to work in different ways, like your own personal way, but also emulate other artists in animation?
Yeah, I mean, animation, if like I know about it coming from a designer. So, you know, you're working as a designer for maybe 6 months on a project and then you're switching to another project. So just having a variety of tools make you kind of more suited to work on different projects. Like you're kind of switching up styles a lot anyway. At least from a design standpoint. Maybe it's a little different if you're a board artist. You can kind of draw the way you draw as long as you're, you know, telling the story. But for designers, I think it's a little more important to have a variety of skills in that respect.
Is there anything you wish you knew before becoming an art director on Tuca and Bertie? Like anything that like you had to learn like on the fly? Or
so much stuff, just anything about like movement and timing, or like just considering, you know, the scale of it on the screen. Like I'm used to comics where you can like bring the book up to your face and be able to read something that's written small. You really can't do that, you know, when it's on a TV screen. Or just thinking about how everything is going to look together. Like you can have a character that looks great, but then a background that looks great, but they look terrible together. Just keeping the full picture in mind as you're working on like these very disparate parts has been kind of challenging.
I'm also curious, since obviously Lisa Hannah Walt's show is Tuca and Bertie, and she had her own very distinct style that she needed to be translated. And but she had also been the art director on BoJack. So then you're balancing her style, like differing the BoJack style and her work. Like, how did you manage, like, what was the process of finding that happy medium like?
She felt very comfortable doing characters. Even on BoJack, she was production designer and she designed all the characters, but a lot of the backgrounds was kind of separate. She would give notes and stuff on that, but the background team kind of were a little more on their own as opposed to the character team. So I was also very comfortable coming in as a background artist. So we kind of went that route, focusing on the environment and kind of the more side characters, just pushing it more surreal. I didn't show all of the kind of pre-production sketches I did, but we really just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what's stuck, just trying a whole bunch of different things and seeing what was working.
Yay, that's awesome. I can't wait for there to be an art book one day. So since the pandemic has sort of changed the way we're all working, like, do you feel like there are certain things about working remotely that has been beneficial to your art making? Since like, I really like those comics that you've been working on. It seems like the being alone comic has really made a comeback in 2020 and 2021. So how do you feel like the pandemic's like changed your art making, and also, you know, working with a team? Too big a question, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure it has that much. I'm generally pretty solitary anyway. I think having it be a necessity and not a choice has been kind of frustrating, because I do like to, you know, leave the house every once in a while. And now I'm just here and my computer's here and I'm like, well, I might as well keep working because there's nothing else to do, which is a blessing and a curse. I think this season's going to be really, really great, but it feels like kind of that's all I've been working on lately. But it is also nice working from home. I can, you know, take a 5-minute break and doodle out a comic and no one's, you know, watching over my back being like, what are you working on?
Well, I can't wait to see more of those. Jake, we have time. So do you want to start taking some Q&As?
Yeah, I can do that. So I just want to remind everybody that we do have a Q&A function in the bottom right-hand side of Zoom. So if you have any questions that you want to ask, that's the best way to go about doing that. I'm gonna from anonymous, we have, how do you buckle down the digital work when you're used to jumping around between mediums? So maybe did you experience any challenges when you're, moving from being a multimedia illustrator extraordinaire to somebody who's kind of, just on a Cintiq drawing in Photoshop or Flash?
Yeah, it was really hard. I had never really, I guess I hadn't used like a Cintiq before working on Bojack's. I had like a little tablet and I really hated it. It didn't feel like drawing at all. I think a Cintiq is similar enough where I'm not like frustrated with the process or anything. Parts of it are really nice. You can undo something you've done. You can make multiple copies. Parts of it are really great. I think just keeping a personal practice separate from work has also been really helpful. Just keeping a sketchbook and having a piece of paper next to my Cintiq when I want to actually do something a little more physical.
Awesome. And then from Shelby Nicholas, are there any mistakes that you made early on? This is like kind of a multi-part question, so I'll start with that. Are there any mistakes that you made early on?
I'm taking that question to mean early on as an art director, and definitely yes. I think it took a while to, I'm definitely still working on this, but learning how to trust so many people was something I feel so personally strong about. Like, I love working on Tuca and Bertie. It's like, it means the world to me, and it was very hard for me to kind of release some of my control to the designers. I think I was a little overbearing the first season. It was hard too because we were trying to develop like our style, and I wanted to make sure it felt cohesive. But the second season, I tried to step back and give people kind of the space to work. I hope they felt that this season.
Awesome. No, that's a super, super helpful answer. So from Shelby again, and also we have another question from Lila Ash, where I think there can kind of be answered similarly. What is your advice to someone who is kind of skirted around the edges of the animation industry? Maybe they have a portfolio, they've tested, but have never gotten hired. What can they do to get more involved? Or, what's some advice that you have for somebody who's graduating and just like hoping to get in?
I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer that because, it took me 10 years to get here. But I think what worked for me is just following my interests and making just genuine connections with people, not coming at it as like, I want to get into the industry, but just like, I was friends with Lisa because we both really loved horses. And she liked the work I was making. It was just very personal to me, and it ended up applying to a project she wanted to work on. It wasn't like I was art directing other cartoons and she was like, oh, she can do this job. It was more, she saw kind of my sensibilities and my sense of humor and thought that worked for what she wanted in her work.
Rad. Ed Shems is asking, do you bounce your personal comic work off of anyone, or do you kind of just push people out? Do you run and hide? What's your process for coming up with new comic stuff? I'm getting the sense Ed might know you.
Wait, ask that question again. Sorry.
What's your process for like developing your comic work? Do you bounce your ideas off of people, or do you kind of like develop them on your own?
Oh, they're, mostly just very personal experiences. So it's just me living and then coming home and being like, that was weird. I got to show the world what this one lady said to me about my dog today. And yeah, very
nice.
Very personal.
Let's see. We have another one from Jackie Froll, who wants to know, do you have any ideas or aspirations to bring your own show to life? Or are you comfortable sort of in this position as like an art director working on like someone else's vision? Do you have, or maybe there's like a combination?
I don't have any plans currently. I've definitely thought about it. Right now, I love working on Tuca. It feels kind of like my show. I think a lot of the stuff Lisa writes about is kind of applicable to my own life. I would love to make a show someday. I don't know what it would be, but maybe you'll see it someday.
That'd be awesome. I definitely support that. Maddie Dennis asks, I'm curious about the process of making characters animatable, especially starting from the comics world, and wondering how you go about figuring out what details are essential versus what you can cut.
That's really hard, and definitely everybody has different ideas about that. Well, what do I think? For Tuca and Bertie, I really try and cut down on details. I had a slide about the characters, like a buckle for a backpack, not drawing like every piece of the buckle, just kind of simplifying it. Definitely like a legible silhouette is really important. Minimizing patterns. We do our characters in Flash, so they're puppeted and then we send them overseas for animation. So you don't want patterns, because if there's like a elbow joint, the pattern gets broken. You want to keep things easy for the animator, so things are very fluid. Just simplifying clothing details, color, pattern. But also there's something nice about, having, sometimes the costume is very important for the character. And sometimes, I don't know, it's kind of a case by case basis. I don't have a great answer. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's a good answer. I think the one thing that I always tell people that come from illustration background is like, imagine that you're not the one drawing the character. You're handing it to a board artist who's going to have to draw this character every day for the next year. And it's got to be easy and fun for them to draw. I've got two questions about inspirations for you. One of them is specific, like where are some tried and true sources for your color inspiration? And then maybe what are some contemporary artists or current artists that whose work you're really digging?
Well, like I said, the Fauves really started inspiring me. I like hated Gauguin and like Matisse and all those people until maybe like 3 years ago. Just being in LA has been really inspiring. A lot of cool old signage, just like the light and color here is unbelievable. What else? I'm looking around my room. I love Tara Booth's work. Sophia Foster Domino. I love the old Fort Thunder people, Brian Chippendale. A lot of my friends are very inspiring. Let's see, this is Juhi Yoon. These were, I mentioned very early, I volunteered at a studio for artists with developmental disabilities, and these two portraits came from there. This is Vincent Jackson's work. These are by Ako Castuera, who's a comic and animation artist, but she also makes beautiful sculptures. Yeah.
Rad. Paul Karasik is asking, any 2021 advice specifically for students who want to make more comics post RISD?
Do it. Just do it.
Just make a comic.
Yeah, just do it. I mean, kind of that's it. Don't like create pressure for yourself. Just do it. I don't know.
No, that's great. Sometimes that is the simplest answer is the best. Just do it. From Treva Offit, as an alum of RISD's cabarets, I'm curious about the impact of performance through RISD, through RISD the musical. Has had, sorry, this got worded weird coming out of my mouth. I'm bad at words. What was the impact on your professional life for characters, timing, and scenes based from your experience working on the RISD the musical?
I I was just doing production. I didn't have any, like I wasn't in the play or I wasn't working on scenes or anything. I was kind of on the back end doing all the props and sets. So not much.
Fair enough. Let's see. I've got 2 pet questions. It looks like somebody missed the name of your dog and was hoping we could hear it again.
This is Lou. And I also have another dog, Doc, who's just ran out of the room.
Awesome. And then have you ever had your pets cameo in BoJack or Tuca and Bertie? And what's your horse's name?
My horse's name is Kirby. Lou in BoJack season 5, I think the episode where Ruthie, when Princess Caroline is talking about like her future grandchild, Lou and my mom kind of fly by in a helicopter in that episode. Kirby will be in this season of BoJack, of Tuca, in a background. Yeah.
We
Awesome.
have more time for Q&As, but I also wanted to ask you something, Alison, that I think is on some people's minds, and it's sort of relevant to like students graduating and people trying to get into the industry. Like, what do you look for as an art director in someone's work?
I think one of the most important things is someone who looks like sorry, I don't want this to be a bad answer, but someone who looks like they're having fun doing their work.
That's a good answer.
I would much rather see kind of like what your interest is as an artist more than you trying to like emulate anyone's style. I want to see what like you're interested in, what your vision is and what you can bring to the production versus even like technical skill or anything. Even though that stuff is important, I think that's kind of secondary to kind of what your interests are.
I think that's a good answer. Thank you, Alison. Sorry, Jake, go ahead.
No, I don't think there's any more questions right now.
Thanks, guys.
Speak now or forever hold your peace, guys.
Yeah.
We've got a little bit of time left, so if you have a question, ask it now. You have your 5 minutes with the amazing Alison.
Countdown 10, 9, 8. I hope you're a fast typer.
Well, there's a lot of people that are quite happy about the RISD musical. I can tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here, I've got some 2 self-promo questions. I guess we have 2 people who are asking if your work is available for purchase, and specifically any of your LA drawings, and specifically if the EHP yearbook, if there's any available.
What do I have available? You guys could email me, I guess. I don't have, I do have some books and stuff. Email me. It's my name, Alison Dubois, and then here, HERE @gmail.com. I may have 1 or 2 of the LA drawings left. I sold them as kind of a fundraiser a couple years ago, but I think I have a couple. I have a book of those marker master copy drawings. I think I have a few 4-square comic anthologies left, maybe 1 Antiques Roadshow. I might reprint Horse Girl Dog Mom, but I'm not sure. Send me an email.
Awesome. Do you plan on getting back into sewing and fabric craft?
Yeah, I've had a pattern for a quilt I've wanted to make for like 4 years, and I have part of it cut out, but I haven't had time this year. But someday, maybe when I retire and move to the woods, I'll start quilting again.
Just you and your horse. I love it. Let's see. Do you watch cartoons?
I do. Not as much.
Wait.
Don't ask me any questions though.
Okay. No, I'm always curious because I do find that it is interesting to see like a lot of people in the animation industry who have like sort of more like DIY art or illustration background sometimes come into the animation industry without having that like traditional passion, like it's sort of like that traditional interest in animation as an art form, and it just ends up developing like through more unique pathways of inspiration. What cartoons are you watching right now?
Right now, what am I watching? I don't have a lot of time to watch. What have I watched? I love, oh my God, what is it called? That mushroom show on Cartoon Network.
The Fungies.
The Fungies?
Oh, it's so cute.
Which one?
The
That's
Fungies.
my show.
Is it?
Everybody join
Moriah
us on the
does correct me there.
Fungies.
I love
So
the
cute.
Yeah, I'm so glad you like it. A lot of sweethearts working on the show. Everybody check it out.
binged it so hard. I really needed it last year. It was so good. I like Midnight Gospel.
Me too.
Adventure
Super
Time.
biased.
Yeah, those are top three. Bob's, just for fun. What else? Laser Wolf. I watched Laser Wolf. That was great. A lot of Tuca people worked on Laser Wolf too. Yeah.
Laser Wolf is very cool. Super stylish.
Yeah, beautiful.
Rad. I guess we have another comics question. Any places that you would recommend submitting your work to, or yeah,
Comics.
any places to submit comics to? Who's publishing interesting comics right now, and do you publish anywhere?
I don't have like a publisher per se. A lot of my stuff has been self-published. Tiny Splendor I've worked with. I think they take submissions. They have kind of a cool deal.
Oh, they're super awesome.
Yeah, they'll make.
I live right by them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, they'll like make an edition and then they'll give you half, and then they'll take half and sell. So like kind of that's their payment, is selling half of the production run, which is really cool. Who else? Colorama. I think Color Code. Shoot, I should have had a list up.
Like Color Code.
This year I've lost all like my recall and memory skills, which I had like none before. So Tiny Splendor is really great. Oh, there's so many I'm forgetting. I'm gonna kill myself later. I think we're gonna send out an email at the end of this with I can give links and stuff in that email. I'll do that.
Ooh, that'd be awesome. Let's see.
A lot of people saying thank you.
It. Yeah, there's people thanking you, asking you to confess who your favorite RISD teacher is, all that good stuff.
Well, I guess if no one else has any questions for Alison, then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, let's do it. Thank you guys all so much for coming out and hearing Alison's talk. It was really great to see a little bit about her career and the pathway to becoming the art director on arguably one of the best shows on television right now. I hope you're super stoked to see the second season, and thank you for supporting the RISD Animation Alumni Affinity Group. I think I said all those A words in the right order. Yeah. I don't know. What else do we have to talk about?
The weather.
Thank you, Alison.
Thank you
so much for your time. I know
Everybody
you're
give
busy
a round of applause in your own house for Alison.
Yay, Alison.
You.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Have a great rest of your day, y'all.
Yeah, we're hoping to do a lot more events like this in the future to the best of our ability. Really what we're hoping to do is kind of catch the juniors and seniors as they're coming out of RISD. I like to think of students as future alumni. So that's the best way to keep this group alive. It's once you get out to LA or start working, it's harder to bring you back into the fold again. So we're hoping to keep people involved as you're all graduating. And yeah, hopefully in the future, that'll lead to opportunities for us to do in-person events, maybe funded events, and just make this, let this group continue to thrive and grow in an awesome way. So yeah, thank you all for coming so much.
All right, I'm gonna leave now. Bye, guys.
All right, everybody, time to dip out.
Bye.